Hello, crafters and artisans, and welcome back to Psychedelic Squid Fiber Arts. Today, I'm going to show you how to make a support spindle without a lathe. Now, you can make a really well-balanced support spindle this way. However, spindles made on a lathe will be more balanced. I'm going to show you how to make two types, a lighter weight spindle with a wood tip and a heavier style with a metal tip. To start, we'll need dowels. For the larger spindle, I'm using a 1/4 inch oak, and for the smaller one, I'm using 3/16 inch poplar. I cut these down to 11 inches in length. Initially, I got these wood wheels to use as the whirl or the body of the spindle, but I didn't like them because the holes weren't centered. I also got these wood beads because I really like the shape of some of them. Again, the holes aren't perfectly centered, but they were pretty close on the beads. Additionally, I'm going to be using steel yarn needles for the metal tipped spindle and epoxy specifically because I'll be gluing metal and wood together. For the support bowl, I'm going to modify this random corner block I got from the trim and molding section at my hardware store. In addition, you'll want a nice pencil sharpener. Since I'm not using the wood wheels from the craft store, I'm going to cut my own using a 2-inch hole saw with a 1/4 inch center drill bit. Now, I'm going to have to modify this awesome wood bead by making the hole larger to fit on the spindle. So I just drilled it out using a 1/4 inch drill bit. So I sanded down the edges of the wood circle I cut and rounded them. Now we're going to form our tips by using the pencil sharpener. I'm going to go until a nice tip is formed on each end. The point that it spins on is the spinning tip, and the other tapered end is the flicking tip that you'll use to spin the spindle. The poplar is softer and shapes nicely. The oak is a bit tougher, so be sure to do this carefully, otherwise you might end up snapping the dowel like I did. However, my second attempt came out nicely. For the flicking tip of the lighter spindle, I sanded the end so it's more tapered by using a low angle against the sandpaper like this. To add the decorative ridges, I'm using a thin metal ruler with sandpaper wrapped around it. Then I carefully saw the dowel until I form valleys. You could also use a Dremel to do this if you have the right carving or sanding bits. For the heavier spindle, I used my orbital sander to shape the tip into a bulb by sanding the dowel with the edge and modifying the angle of the dowel like I'm showing here. I did this while spinning the dowel to try to make sure the sanding was even. For the spinning tip of the heavier spindle, I sanded just the tip flat as I'm going to use one of the steel yarn needles to create a tip. I cut a needle in half, then sanded the thicker end so that it forms a rounded point. If I was to add a metal tip to the smaller spindle, I would round the existing tip and use this end for it. I drilled out a hole on the flattened tip of the larger dowel so that this can be recessed into it like this. Remember to dry fit this before gluing. Next, I'm going to mix up my epoxy and use it to secure the metal tip into the dowel. Now, to assemble the spindle, I want to make sure all my beads or whirls fit properly and figure out the exact placement for them. Then I'm going to use wood glue to secure them. You can also use epoxy, but I find wood glue to be more forgiving. I did this for both spindles, and you can see how nicely it spins already. For the support bowl, I'm going to start using my router to remove the center ridges. You can also use a Dremel or even a wood chisel for this part. Then I'm going to sand, and sand again, going up in grit. Once it's completely smooth, I like to try out the spindle to make sure there are no issues. All that's left at this point is to finish it however you'd like. I charred the wood, lightly sanded, and used different colors of unicorn spit. And lastly, I sealed it with 4 coats of polyurethane. Please let me know if you have any questions in the comments section below, and feel free to visit my Facebook page or Instagram to ask clarifying questions or about things I haven't covered yet. Thank you all so much for exploring the depths of your creativity, and I'll see you next time.